The wealthy are chasing health and the healthy are chasing wealth. There's no medicine to help with financial literacy. It takes discipline.
The salary sacrifice is a mechanism of going, I want to let go of a portion of my salary and attain to add wealth or create an asset and add benefit from a tax perspective. I want to include super as a big part of it. The reason why is super is the only asset when you take that in retirement and you earn an income is tax-free.
A lot of the time, I see a lot of people trying to do things at a later stage. It doesn't mean that it's impossible to get to where they want to be, but once again, the work to get there is significantly different. Whilst you're young, start it when you're younger. It's going to be easy, seamless. You're not going to feel it, and you will set yourself up for success.
You're not late in age. You're just late in the process. Hello and welcome to another episode of From Wire to Wealth. Welcome our two guests, Regmi.
G'day, Gabs.
Dean Desoukey.
How are you,
from
Gab?
Ryker Capital.
Thank you.
I
Excited
like
to
that.
be
It
here.
slips off the tongue. Ryker Capital. How are we today?
Yeah, good.
Great.
How's yourself? Excited to be here. I think it's one of my exciting topics that I think we've sort of spoke about earlier.
And if I was to take a kid into a candy store or Ray into a room to discuss all things financial planning, and yourself, Dean, I know where to take you guys.
Yeah.
It's an interesting time that we're currently facing. We've had a rate decrease, which is great for some from a confidence perspective. We touch on a regular basis as to how do we help improve clients' position in
Financial
life.
well-being.
Yeah. People look at, I'm healthy. I go to the gym regularly, but is that what healthy is? So I've noticed really in the last 6 to 8 months, the wealthy are chasing health and the healthy are chasing wealth. Where do you find the median?
It's got to be the right combination for both. You need the approach for both sides to work well.
There's no medicine to help with financial literacy. It takes discipline.
It does. And I think starting in that early part of the program for financial literacy is very, very important.
And again, I repeat and drive the message home. It starts in the schools. Rocking up to school in the blazer, clean haircut. There's much more to life post-schooling. Great at what they do from the curriculum perspective, but I just think financial literacy is the major downfall with people coming out into the real world.
And there's a lot more to be done as far as that financial literacy goes. It's not just pertaining to specific parts of financial literacy, because money goes above and beyond that sort of structure, because there is tax, there's insurance, there's superannuation, there's managed funds, shares, you name it, right? So the financial literacy is such a massive, massive topic.
And what I want to discuss today is salary sacrificing. And the reason why I want to discuss salary sacrificing is we get a lot of, so I'll go into a little bit of what we're going to discuss, but why this topic interests me. Business owners can purchase new assets and depreciate them. You can buy a car in a personal name, non-business related, but you can't depreciate the asset if it's used for personal use.
Correct.
So how do you take advantage? And the only thing I can look at, and quote me if I'm wrong, is salary sacrificing. So what is salary sacrificing? It's an arrangement between you and the employer and your employee, and your employee agrees to forego part of their salary or wages in return for benefits of similar value, such as more super or a car. So car, we won't go into detail of that, but novated lease. So we can touch on that as well. Yeah. But the other things, an effective salary sacrifice arrangement is the employee pays less income tax on their deducted salary or wages. You as the employer, you have fringe benefits tax on the fringe benefits you provide. Salary sacrifice super contributions are classified as employer super contributions that are taxed in the super fund. The list goes on, but what isn't effective? Everybody's circumstances are different. But tell me a little bit about your cases that you're going through. Somebody comes to you, Dean, you and I have had cases where clients been on 180,000 plus, homeowner, just enough money, partner doesn't work, 2 kids. They want to reduce their tax. Tell me a bit about what happened there.
Yeah, look, a couple of things we did, but look, at the end of the day, I think anything you can do to reduce your taxes, you're obviously going to be in a better position, because this is money that you potentially would have never had. right? Now, some of the strategies that we utilize is we partly recommend for it as well. One of the pitfalls or downfalls with buying something, salary sacrificing and buying like a car, is the fact that it's an asset that is depreciating in value over the long term. So you may have purchased this car today. Say you paid $100,000 for it, $70,000 for it. Now we've financed it for the next 3, 4, 5,
Call it 5 years.
5 years, right? Now, by the time the 5-year period's finished, we've been putting this money. Yes, we'll be getting this tax advantage, but then at the same time, when you come and look at it, what are we really getting at the end of it? So we've paid this $100,000 car. Over the 5-year period, it's probably only worth 50 grand now, maybe even 40 grand. Now, one of the things that we've done for clients, one of the things that I've been able to help clients with is utilizing salary sacrificing, but not only for looking to get the benefit of today, but also helping them in the long term, right? Through super, right? So by doing something little as salary sacrificing, putting some money back into super, this is going to be then invested, which will then be compounded in the long term. So that extra $50, $100 a month or a week that you're putting in, that's actually going to be invested. And over the long term, it's going to compound and will make a significant difference.
In simple terms, and we're going to go back onto that. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry. I'm on 180,000. So let's talk simple before strategies, simple salary sacrifice numbers. I'm on 180,000. My tax bracket would be at what?
Roughly at about, let's just say 37, 36%.
Perfect. I come to you guys and say, I want to salary sacrifice 10% of my wage. Does that mean my tax reduces on that basis?
Let's go back a step.
Yes.
I really like to go. So salary
sacrifice.
sacrifice.
We're going to go back to you on.
No, that's okay.
So salary sacrifice is a mechanism of going, I want to let go of a portion of my salary and attain to add wealth or create an asset and add benefit from a tax perspective. So the whole reason of salary sacrifice was to exist. It wasn't purely to sort of minimize tax, but it was to sort of build wealth or create or add an asset, and then the subsidiary benefit is tax. So at any time you're looking at a structure of that part of the strategy, you got to look at going, what does a salary sacrifice entails? And this salary sacrifice can come in a variety of different things. You can salary sacrifice for shares. So obviously in my prior role, when I was working for CBA, Commonwealth Bank for 16 years, I had the ability to salary sacrifice for attaining Commonwealth Bank shares. I could buy that if my marginal tax rate was 30%, and I'm letting go of that and then buying a share. That added a significant benefit to me because really, I mean, like if I looked at it, I'll pretend 30% cheaper, right? I can salary sacrifice. Some of the other occupation may have salary sacrifice for home loans.
I want to touch on that as well.
Now, not every employer offers that. It's certain government occupations, or certain state-based occupations.
It's usually the, public servants,
nurses, some of the
non-profit
organisations. Yep. I could salary sacrifice for a vehicle, like Dean said, salary sacrifice for super. And there's a variety of other means of salary sacrifice arrangement that could be available. It all depends on employer, who you work for, and what does that structure looks like for them in order to sort of help you benefit out of it. So salary sacrifice structure works really well in a way that it not only allows you to sort of build wealth over time, or add an asset, but also helps you create a bit of a tax discipline to go, well, how do I create or build a wealth? Now, in other words, if you want to look at it, investment property could be the same, because essentially what you're doing is you're creating a wealth, adding an asset, and getting a bit of a tax benefit at the same time. So you need to, depending on your circumstances, you need to run multiple of the different of these parallel scenarios. It could be super, it could be shares, it could be property, it could be a variety of different aspects. So it will come down to your goals and objectives as to what I put as a priority first in my life, and then work your way through it. But what you don't want to do is go through 35 years of your working life and gone, I've had no tax strategy. I've literally destroyed my working life and created no wealth added strategy for myself, and it's all gone. So my recommendation is when people start working, let's look at the strategy. Let's look at the strategy, what that looks like for you as an individual, and what you want to do as per your goals and objectives over the course of 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, 15 years time.
What's the norm? What do you, when it comes to strategies in that respect, what are you saying? Are you saying every 12 months they reassess, every 2 years? What are you saying?
Oh, look, it depends on the client situation, circumstances, but usually, yeah, I'd say every 12 months. Just you want to make sure that look, I think especially if there's been a significant change in their circumstances, they've got pay rises, new jobs, just started a new career, anything like that where there's a significant change, it's so imperative to do that, to make sure obviously you're on track for success.
And I cut you off earlier in regards to the strategies you were discussing. Do you want to touch back on that? Or is it the distant memory now?
A bit of a distant memory, but we'll get there. No.
It's gone.
No.
But in reference to...
Sorry, that was me. My bad, actually. I
No. So look, I think as Ray was mentioning, it obviously depends on the circumstances and stuff, but there are multiple things that can be done. But look, you'll be quite surprised where the younger you are, once you start these types of tax strategies, it makes such a significant difference. Like I was saying, because it compounds. Now, part of the things of what we do is when we look into running these scenarios, I'm able to do some modeling, right? Now, for example, adding something minuscule to super as an example, right? Something that you're not going to feel, right? Like I had a 23-year-old, 24-year-old, where we were basically adding an extra $50 salary sacrifice, okay? And that's an amount he's not going to feel. But when we looked at it and we modeled it for the long term, this uplift his super by roughly around about $700,000 at retirement.
And I've got that vivid example because I started with one of my clients. So look, obviously I've been doing this for past 20 years and this client has been with me for 15 years and coming up to retirement where they had very literally very small balance to where they are now because they took a very disciplined approach of utilizing that $5,000 strategy where they either sort of pay that to the ATO or essentially help them build up their retirement world. That $5,000 literally compounded, giving them extra $850,000 in retirement now.
Up until this point, I never found financial planning satisfying. I always looked at it and I'm going, really? Like, this is what financial planning, but that there is a wow factor for me. You're adding value, but a lot of people don't look at it on the macro and they've gone, oh, but I need that money now. But you're saying $50 at 23 is going to be at 700 by 67. And you, for the last 15 years, they had a small portion and it's growing. It just makes you think of ways to, look, you're helping yourself. Essentially, you're helping yourself. And if you're not going to help yourself, how are you going to help people?
Look, unfortunately, I've been doing this for a very long time. All right. And,
I know we can talk about the grey hairs.
Well, that's the reason why my hair's thinning. Look, I've seen some great stuff and I've seen some challenging stuff. But look, a lot of the time I see a lot of people trying to do things at a later stage. And unfortunately, whilst they try to start at a later stage, it doesn't.
What's a later stage to you?
So 55, 60, right? It doesn't mean that it's impossible to get to where they want to be. But once again, the work to get there is significantly different. And once again, let's go back to the example that I was mentioning with my client saying putting an extra $50 a week, and Ray saying with the one that he was talking about was around about $5,000, right? A year or whatever it is, right? I'm assuming that would have been much older, but it just shows to you sometimes it still can be done, but there's a lot more effort that's required. So I always say to clients, it's imperative. Whilst you're young, start it when you're younger. It's going to be easy, seamless. You're not going to feel it, and you'll set yourself up for success.
Yeah, it leads me to when you're sitting down and you're having a think and you're reflecting and you're watching things. And, I think Denzel Washington said it the best. He goes, the first quarter of your life, you learn. The second quarter of your life, you earn. And then the third quarter of your life, you return. So if we put that down to this conversation, the first 20, 25 years, you're still learning. I know I didn't start learning until I was about 30, 31, probably about 32. And then you get to a point where you earn, and that's where the lateness comes in, and you go, I'm a late bloomer, but I'm not too late. And then the return part is not necessarily what we're doing now. We like to look at it as educating, but it's the return part. Because again, if I was to turn to my 15, 16, 18-year-old self, it'll be the strategies in place to help me better my future. And we don't focus on the learn, earn, return phases in our life. We just go, right, I'm making $1 now, YOLO, spend it now and worry about the rest later. But you guys come into the picture. Rain, we've had multiple conversations over the years. We've known each other for years, and you haven't actually said this out yourself, but to an extent where it's this analogy. You learn, you earn, and return. Yeah. 15 years you've been with this guy. He was probably at the earn stage when you first spoke to him.
45. Yeah.
That was the earn stage.
44. Yeah. And I think for them, it was much the same. It was the instant gratification of what I earn and what can I see right now? What can I get? And what can I touch and feel? So getting them to that mindset of habit to go, you got to let it go. You're going to see these rewards as they sort of come along over the period of time. And as we sort of went through the 2-year, 3-year, 4-year, 5-year mark, for them, that was just a natural structure. They got accustomed to it. They got used to it. They're gone, this is fantastic. I regret not doing this a lot earlier because I've just wasted that 10 years of my working life and it's gone. But again, I don't want them to sort of feel like that anyway.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a lot of people say to me, oh, it's too late.
It's never too late.
I can't start that business. I can't start exercising.
No.
I can't start an education. And you're never late. Gary Vaynerchuk says it the best. I don't say these quotes because they're mine, but Gary Vaynerchuk says it the best. You're not late in age. You're just late in the process.
Yeah. True. Very true.
So in this instance, a 55-year-old, not ideal. In respect to,
again, it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't.
It's not ideal to want to get to hypothetically $700,000 in super by contributing $50 and with the compounded interest and so forth. But you're just late in the process. You can start it.
And again, it's not necessarily about super Gabs when we sort of talk about.
I'm giving that as an example. Yeah. I think that's what we discussed.
But it could be multitude of different assets, structures, or strategies that you could create to sort of get to that process or during that. That transition. So even if you're at 55, you go, well, okay, I'm going to retire in 10 years time. Now, what does that look like that I'm going to really buckle down?
Okay. But you're saying not necessarily super. And I purposely cut you off there. Sorry. I want to understand that if I'm 55, what strategies, and everybody's circumstances are different. And that's why I went back to Dean's client that we had together. But what strategies would you have in play for a 55-year-old?
Now, look, I think when I look at a 55-year-old, I'd firstly look at their goals and objectives, go, what does this next 10 years looks like for you? I really want to bring into focus to go, well, if you're really serious about this, let's put this pen to paper. Let's understand what you're trying to achieve in the next 10 years. Because it's going to make a massive difference between you eating either 2-minute noodles or, having that nice meal at a restaurant. So we really sort of sit down, pen to paper. What are some of the employment contracts looks like for them? What are some of the things they can utilize from the employer perspective in the form of sacrificing? What does that look like from their goals and objectives, whether they want to pay down the loan? And then between the combination of those would sort of start to work to some of the tax strategies and habits, whether it be in the form of super, investment property, whether it be in the form of any other assets they want to build up for themselves over time. But it's going to create an objective of wealth growth, but utilizing the wealth growth strategy, but also creating some form of tax benefits at the same time. Everything highlights the tax benefits.
Like a clock. He starts at 12 and works their way around and finishes at 12. So if super is part of their wealth creation strategy.
It is.
But I come to you and go, I don't want to put in super. Give me other strategies.
And I want to include super as a big part of it. The reason why is super is the only asset when you take that in retirement and you earn an income at that retirement age, it's tax-free. Now, is a massive difference between you earning $1 million interest in your bank account, getting 6% and paying tax on that, as opposed to doing the same thing in super, keeping it all. Now, I think people think that super is bad, is just terrible. And I think it's not that super is bad. Super is merely a tax structure.
It's not tangible.
No, they
can't go to their bank account and just withdraw from the ATM. I think that's what
I know.
The mindset is.
Yeah. But see, all it is a tax structure. There's raised tax structure and there's raised super tax structure. So merely it is a tax structure. Now, what sits within this super is the underlying assets. Now, some people have shares who might not have had a great experience with shares. They go, oh, super is bad because my shares values have gone down.
So that's where you're saying shares. It's still super, but you're strategically.
Could be anything. Could be property. Could be shares.
Yeah. Okay.
Could be managed funds.
Yeah.
Could be any other form of the asset which allows them to make this income tax-free in retirement. I think is very important because the only place in Australia where you can earn an income and pay no tax in retirement.
Yes, super.
As opposed to doing that outside and paying significant taxes in retirement and perpetually doing that.
You make sense now. So when
gotcha moment.
Super's like stop, whereby super is a form of income post-retirement with no tax. So you may take less now, but less is more because when you're at that age and you've done the exemptions into super via shares or whatever platform you have it under there, managed funds, like you said, whatever inside the super, The tax bracket doesn't change. You're still paying 0% over 60. Is that correct?
Yeah, 0% tax.
Yes.
So let's say if that person is
earnings.
retired
Yes.
at the age of 60, now doesn't matter whether they could have a term deposit in there, $1 million worth of cash, setting a term deposit. Let's just say it's earning 6%. Not that I'm assuming they would be now, and that $60,000 that you made is tax free. Do that outside. You're going to pay, I don't know, $7,000 tax, $5,000.
It's you said that assuming the 6%. Again, we look short term. If you factor in the variables, every 7 years we go through a cycle, interest rates go high, term deposit rates go high, then rates go down. What happens to term deposit rates?
Oh, look, obviously,
Yeah.
that was just an example to sort of for people to get through that mindset. But obviously, the important thing is you're going to look at a variety of different things like your liquidity risk, your market risk, and things
But what
like
I'm
that.
trying to get at is when it's done through the super as a blanket approach, you can change your strategy within that. So you could say term deposit rates are now 1% hypothetically. Let's move it from here and put it there. You're going to get back to the 3%, whatever it is, using silly numbers.
You're right, but you need to have a long-term approach, Gaps. And I think it's very important because if we do chop and change because term deposit rates are low and I'm going to go into the market, I think it's a very dangerous strategy. You got to have a look at a very long-term approach to go, well, look, I understand how the market works. Now, we use the variety of different bucketing strategy, we call it. Now, let's just say 50% of our money in that client's circumstances where they are necessarily not that wanting to take a risk. However, what they will do is go, well, look, I'm happy with 50% of my money being in shares and the other 50 can be in cash and bonds. Now, even if the market was to go down, it's going to take them a significant period of time to market to come back up. They've got enough money sitting in cash and bonds for them to be stability, for them to be earning income, a little income, but it's sort of meeting their living expenses.
So that's all the things you have to factor in. You were going to say something?
Look, a lot of the time as well, if people to fail to understand, I think they look at what happens now, but they don't look at what's happened the past 100, 200 years. Right, and what I'm trying to say is
you're going back.
No, because what I'm trying to say is that if you go back and you look at investing, whether that be through cash and term deposits, whether you go through property, and where the biggest question mark from a lot of people talks about shares and all that type of stuff, you go back and look at history, right? Every single time within history, there are always going to be times where there's going to be volatility. So the market may take a bit of a hit, but it's always on a trajectory going up, right? So in the long term, your money is still increasing. So it's important it's depending on the client's situation, what stage in life that they're in, need to really understand over the long term, the money is, they will be better off and the funds are going to be continuing to grow. Whereas if you're too conservative and you're really, really holding your hands together and don't want to take on any form of risk, that's when obviously it would actually be just as detrimental because obviously you're really limiting your capacity for growth, which will then cause you to not have as much in retirement and then you obviously...
I'm thinking of the 23-year-old he spoke to. Yeah. Now, the closest thing to a recession a 23-year-old has seen is... COVID. Right? So when I try and tell people stop...
It wasn't quite a recession, by the way. But yeah.
No. I'm trying to get at the closest thing.
Yeah.
So what he's seen was lockdown, people just withdrawing money out of the super because the government said you're not tested, just take it out if you need it and we'll worry about the rest later. You could make grants if you didn't need it, you made it. Those stories of unfolding in the media. But that's the most he's seen. Now, if we just scale it back... Right? If we just scale it back to the 89, 90, 91, that in itself was a pandemic for the people who are on $150 a week.
Yeah.
So the pandemic we went through was controlled via funds being thrown at people. But back then, I didn't have a handout from the government. So a lot of people lost their houses at 17% interest. And people say to me, but it's different. Back then, the wages were low and the house prices were low. It's equivalent to now where house prices are high, wages are high, interest rates are reasonable.
They were relative to that environment.
Sure.
Correct. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that 23-year-old, can he see the future unless he's being convinced? So we sell with conviction because, this is where you would be. And it's great. I've seen your modeling. Your modeling is spits out the numbers. But that's what I'm trying to get at. The closest thing he's seen to a recession would have been what's happened since he was 17, 18. You were going to touch on something on.
Look, I was just going to go back to earlier Dean's point. I think it's very, very important that, you're looking at the client demographic and age, because he doesn't have that kind of time in retirement left to sort of be taking that level of risk. And I think if they're utilizing that amount of money to draw down and living on their expenses, and there is a bit of a market downturn, and what they're doing as they're taking income out of it, they're expediting the fall on the market. And simultaneously, and when the markets are up, and if you're sort of taking funds out, you're creating a bit of an impact on the growth. So there's got to be a perfect aligned strategy for that individual and how some of these assets are distributed and allocated for that individual person's super that is conducive to them and works for them. And that's why the right appropriate strategy of how you structure these aligned investments in their super is very important. And people sometimes don't do that. And what they do is go, market's about to drop. We're just going to sell. And they've already had the drop. And I'm going, oh my God, you shouldn't have done that, because now you've cashed your chips in.
It's interesting, people
that's the moment I go, you know what? I'm putting in my $15,000 worth of contribution in, because I'm going to go claim that as a tax deduction, because it's like me going to Myers and picking up everything at a discount.
You nailed it. But you did, though. Why is it? When was the last time you caught a flight?
Last week.
And do you ask the credibility of the pilot?
Didn't get the opportunity to.
Do you ask the credibility of the pilot?
No, you don't. You hope that, you put a faith in the system.
Do you ask the credibility of a taxi driver or an Uber driver?
No.
You're basing it off an app.
Yeah.
But when it comes to an advisor, I don't know him. I've never worked with him.
Yeah.
But you're catching a plane 30,000+ feet in the air. He's been given a license. He deserves that. He's worked hard for it. Don't misinterpret. I do not question or the credibility for a pilot isn't being questioned here. What I'm asking is the individual themselves. You won't engage in a planner, right? Or an advisor. You won't engage in an advisor because it's too expensive. We've had these conversations and you can't tell me otherwise. But, and I'm not telling you not to, but you'll go buy a cup of coffee and not ask a question about where the barista's been or has he washed his hands. It's a silly analogy, but you'll go buy a cup of coffee, but you won't invest long term for you. Again, it's spun me out. 23-year-old, by the time the modeling's been done, 700. The 55-year-old, by the time the modeling's been done, he's got a difference between 2-minute noodles and eating out at a restaurant.
Yeah. But I think at the same token, I don't mind clients questioning that either. And I tell you why, because I think you've got to make sure that there's a couple of things there. That the advisor has the right accreditation.
Absolutely.
They have the right qualification to advise you in that sector. They have experience in that part of the sector. Would I particularly go to someone who's just come brand new off the industry and has got no experience? Probably not, because they've got a bit of learning to do. Not to say the new planners coming on board are not smart and not well educated. They are. But it's also the experience on hand as to what that experienced advisor has sort of seen over a period of time. That sort of allows them to provide a bit of mental support and guidance to the customer, as opposed to potentially someone who's just come on board may not have experience, but it's rightly okay for them to ask that. I don't mind that from a client's approach, and our clients ask all the time, and I go, look, this is my experience.
The power of social media.
The power of social media, exactly. Yeah.
But in saying that, and just to recap with the salary sacrificing, I would highly recommend you engage an advisor. They're in the industry. The relationship between a broker and a advisor is imperative. Us as brokers and in general, we don't know the tax implications for a particular loan. We don't know the from a savings perspective to loss. Whereas you guys are there and you're always open and willing, right, to answer those questions. So the credibility comes from your work, but engage in that advisor. I highly recommend to do that. More importantly, if a broker is got some form of engagement with the planner / advisor, it makes the job easier, it makes the handover warmer, it makes your interest in the client, their objectives with goal setting and wealth creation, it resonates a lot more with them. They're going, oh wow, they care. They're taking the lead. They're telling me go see this individual. There's under no obligation as to whoever it is, but that's what I'd highly recommend. And you will slowly see that upward trajectory with you as a person, because you've got that all set in life.
But also as well, it does, like, it would complement you guys as well, in the sense that there's only so much with a when obviously you're helping clients out, there's only so much that you can help them with, right? So obviously having someone, a trusted partner like ourselves, to be able to actually help you and to help the clients and answer a lot of the questions that they have. And then, because a lot of the time you don't want to go down that scary avenue of providing advice, right? So obviously,
we just do home loans.
yeah.
We so happen to do and be good at it and everything else. But gentlemen, thank you for your time as usual. Ray Regmi, and I was going to call you Ray Ryker. Ray Regmi and Dean Desoukey from Ryker Capital.
Cheers.
Appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Finance Co.
Thanks for tuning in to the podcast From Why to Wealth. You can find us on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Just search the Finance Co group or see the link in the description. Remember, everything in this podcast is general discussion and information and is not to be taken as financial advice. Always see a professional, as everyone's circumstances are going to be unique.